Welcome to the Explainer. Now, I want you to imagine something for a second. You're standing outside on a really warm, calm spring afternoon. The sky is perfectly blue. Everything feels totally ordinary. But then, in under an hour, that blue sky turns completely black. Massive clouds suddenly stretch tens of thousands of feet into the atmosphere. The wind violently shifts, and this deep, terrifying rumble just keeps getting louder. Off in the distance, a massive rotating column of cloud drops down. In just seconds, nature's absolute most violent force is unleashed. Today, we're diving deep into the science, the raw power, and the profound human impact of the twisting giants that dominate Tornado Alley. Okay, let's dive into our central mystery here. Why is it that absolutely no country on Earth experiences more tornadoes than the United States? I mean, sure, they happen on almost every continent, but the US gets slammed with anywhere from hundreds to well over 1,000 of these violent storms every single year. The sheer frequency, the intensity, and the incredible variety of American tornadoes are just completely unmatched. So to really understand why, we've got to look at the completely unique atmospheric conditions that make this massive geographic anomaly even possible. So here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll unpack the Tornado Alley anomaly. Second, we're going to look at the recipe for a twister. Third, measuring the monsters. Fourth, history and human resilience. And finally, we'll wrap up with the future of forecasting.
Let's kick things off with part one, the Tornado Alley anomaly. It's really crucial to understand right out of the gate that Tornado Alley isn't some official political boundary with road signs or anything like that. It's actually a massive meteorological collision zone. Think about the geography of the Great Plains, stretching all the way from Texas up to South Dakota. It's essentially this giant, uninterrupted corridor. Unlike places like Europe, which have huge mountain ranges like the Alps to block weather systems, the central U.S. has zero natural barriers from north to south. This literally creates a perfect geographic funnel where warm, extremely moist air from the Gulf of Mexico, cold polar air dropping down from Canada, and hot, dry desert air from the west can just slam into each other freely. And scientists are actually noting that this isn't just an anomaly of the plains anymore. There's a rapidly emerging Dixie Alley in the southeast where these exact same violent collisions are happening right over densely populated, heavily forested hills. Moving right along to part two, recipe for a twister. So we have our collision zone, but what's actually happening way up in the sky? Meteorologists often compare making a tornado to baking a cake. If you just have a bag of flour, well, you don't have a cake. You need all the right ingredients to come together perfectly at the exact right time. For a tornado, those four ingredients are moisture, specifically from the Gulf, which acts as the storm's fuel, instability, which happens when warm surface air gets violently trapped underneath much colder high-altitude air, lift, which acts as the trigger. Think of a strong cold front or a dry line that literally forces that trapped warm air to aggressively shoot upward. And finally, wind shear. Driven by the jet stream, wind shear creates drastically changing wind speeds and directions the higher up you go. When you get all four of these elements mixing together just right, they build these explosive cumulonimbus clouds that can soar over 50,000 feet into the atmosphere. Now, you might be wondering, why doesn't every thunderstorm spawn a tornado? Well, an ordinary thunderstorm typically lasts under an hour before its own rain-cooled downdraft literally chokes off the warm air that's feeding it. It basically suffocates itself. But a supercell? That is a whole different beast. A supercell features this incredibly deep, persistent, rotating updraft. What this does is it physically separates the rising warm air from the sinking cold rain. This structural separation is the absolute secret to a supercell.
It allows the storm to just keep raging on for hours and travel hundreds of miles without choking itself out.
So, how does that rotation actually reach the ground? This whole life cycle kicks off with wind shear, which creates this invisible horizontal tube of spinning air up in the sky. Then, that massive supercell updraft acts like a giant vacuum, grabbing that horizontal spinning tube and tilting it completely vertical. This is what creates a rotating core known as a mesocyclone. From there, a dark, ominous wall cloud drops down below the storm's base, which eventually condenses into a visible funnel cloud. But here's a key distinction. It only officially becomes a tornado the exact second that swirling funnel actually touches the dirt. Until then, it's just a funnel cloud.
Let's get into part 3, measuring the monsters. Once one of these twisting giants actually hits the ground, how on earth do scientists quantify its power? I mean, you can't exactly walk up and stick a standard wind gauge into a roaring vortex. It would just blow away. Instead, scientists have to work backwards. They act more like forensic investigators. They use what's called the Enhanced Fujita, or EF scale. This was introduced back in 2007 as a major update to Dr. Fujita's original 1971 scale. Now, the EF scale doesn't measure wind directly while the storm is happening. Instead, experts carefully examine the absolute aftermath, looking at the exact damage left behind to calculate the unbelievable wind speeds that would have been required to cause it. So, the crucial point here is understanding just how horrifying an EF5 rating really is. This is the absolute top of the scale, and thankfully, it's incredibly rare. To achieve an EF5 rating, engineers estimate that wind speeds inside the tornado are exceeding 200 miles per hour. That is just staggering. At that terrifying intensity, a tornado is fully capable of taking a well-built, securely anchored home and completely sweeping it off its foundation, leaving absolutely nothing behind but a bare concrete slab. No debris, just concrete. To make these incredibly precise estimations, the EF scale relies on dozens of official damage indicators. Experts aren't just guessing. They're looking at very specific things like schools, massive steel transmission towers, and they even look to see if bark was stripped entirely off hardwood trees to gauge the sheer force. They ask forensic, engineering-based questions like, okay, was this building actually anchored correctly in the first place, or did the roof fail before the walls caved in? By carefully matching the destruction they see on the ground to known engineering data, they can accurately estimate the true power of the beast that just passed through.
Which brings us to part 4, history and human resilience.
The science behind this is fascinating for sure, but the human impact is simply devastating. When we look back at the history of these storms, we see events that fundamentally altered the entire nation. Take 1925, for example. The tri-state tornado stayed on the ground for a staggering 219 miles, claiming 695 lives long before modern radar warnings even existed. Fast forward to 1999, and a mobile radar literally recorded winds over 300 miles per hour high inside a tornado that struck Moore, Oklahoma. In 2007, an EF5 completely wiped the town of Greensburg, Kansas off the map, but astonishingly, the town chose to rebuild from scratch as a model of sustainable engineering. And then there's the 2011 Joplin tornado, one of the deadliest in modern history with 158 fatalities, which directly forced massive leaps forward in both modern building codes and emergency management. The sad reality is, every major disaster forces our science to evolve.
But if you really want to know what defines Tornado Alley, it's the human element. It's the people. Kids in these regions learn tornado drills the exact same way they learn fire drills. Families make huge investments in underground storm shelters and heavily reinforced safe rooms. Local broadcast meteorologists become these deeply trusted pillars of the community. And when destruction does happen,
Neighbors immediately show up with chainsaws to clear debris and physically rebuild their towns together. It truly is an extraordinary culture of community resilience and adaptation. And finally, part 5, the future of forecasting. The real heroes of this story are the meteorologists and the researchers who are actively venturing right into the unknown just to increase our warning times and protect society. When you dig into the modern forecaster's toolkit, it's amazing to think that just a few decades ago, warning time was essentially zero. Today, by using geostationary satellites and advanced Doppler radar, meteorologists can hunt for highly specific signatures like hook echoes and velocity couplets. They can literally see the storm rapidly rotating miles up in the atmosphere long before a funnel ever drops, pushing warning times from zero to precious, life-saving minutes. We even have mobile radar trucks from scientific initiatives like the Vortex projects driving straight up to these massive storms to scan them in completely unprecedented high-resolution detail. But you know what's crazy? The technology is moving even faster now. The next generation of forecasting tools sounds straight out of a science fiction movie. Instead of traditional radar dishes that take precious minutes just to complete a rotation, we're looking at phased array radars that can update in mere seconds, capturing violent, rapid changes in real time. Scientists are actually deploying uncrewed drones straight into the turbulent boundary layers of these active storms. And of course, AI is now processing incredibly massive historical weather databases in real time, helping forecasters recognize subtle, highly dangerous atmospheric patterns almost instantly. Now, as our technology evolves, so does the atmosphere itself. Right now, there is a massive, incredibly active scientific debate about whether Tornado Alley is actually shifting eastward into much more densely populated areas. On top of that, we know for a fact that a warmer atmosphere holds significantly more moisture. And remember, moisture is one of our key ingredients. However, exactly how climate change is going to impact those other vital ingredients like wind shear, well, that remains a highly complex puzzle. It's something atmospheric scientists are impartially tracking and desperately trying to solve with every passing weather season. So, what's the main takeaway from all of this incredible research? It's pretty clear. We cannot control the atmosphere. There's no stopping a tornado once it forms. But our rapid advancements in forecasting, in structural engineering, and in sheer community preparation have undeniably saved countless lives. Every single upgraded radar scan and every new structural building code is a massive victory of human ingenuity over a completely uncontrollable force of nature. So, I want to leave you with this final thought. As AI begins to process complex storm data in mere milliseconds, and as a shifting climate potentially rewrites the fundamental atmospheric rules, what new secrets will the next generation of weather science reveal about these twisting giants? The Great Plains remain an absolutely incredible natural laboratory, and honestly, our pursuit to understand these monsters is far from over. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.